This is an audio-only story of Zinedine Zidane, a calm, easy-to-follow journey through the life of one of football's greatest minds. You can listen while driving, relaxing, falling asleep or doing other things. There are no visuals or commentary, just peaceful storytelling that lets you imagine his journey from the streets of Marseille to the world stage. So let's begin. Zidane was born on June 23, 1972, in La Castellane, a tough district in Marseille, France, and he was the youngest of 5 children in a family of Algerian descent whose parents, Smail and Malika, had moved to France years earlier in search of a better life. His father worked long nights in a warehouse and as a security guard, while his mother cared for the home, and together they raised their children in modest conditions, in a neighbourhood not known for luxury, but for daily struggle. From as young as 5 years old, Zidane was drawn to football, playing with the other children on a narrow plaza in La Castellane, called Place Tartane, where the rough concrete became his first training ground, and where he learned to dribble, pass, imagine and dream. His early idols included players such as Enzo Francescoli, who played for Olympique de Marseille, and whose style Zidane admired for its grace and elegance. As he grew, he joined local youth clubs. At about age 9, he joined US Saint-Honoré, the neighbourhood club, and later he played for So Septem Les Valiants under a coach named Robert Centenero, who nurtured his talent and encouraged his passion. When he was a teenager, Zidane was selected to attend training camps. At around age 14, he attracted the attention of a recruiter named Jean Varot during a youth training session at the French Football Federation camp, and was invited to try out for AS Cannes' youth academy. He accepted, and he left his hometown to live closer to the club's training environment, moving away from his family to chase a dream. At Cannes, he lived partly with a club director's family and partly in a foyer for youth players, while continuing both schoolwork and football training. As he developed there, he refined his technique, discipline, and focus, often practicing late, dribbling in tight spaces, learning to read the field, and strengthening his resolve. In time, the coaches recognised that he had something rare: control, vision, calm under pressure, and the courage to try things few dared. That early period, between the dusty plaza in Marseille, the youth pitches, the challenges of leaving home, the dreams of a boy with a ball, laid the foundation for who Zidane would become: a footballer rooted in humility, a craftsman of detail, and a man with ambition shaped by hardship and love. When Zinedine Zidane arrived at AS Cannes, he was just 13, a shy boy with quiet eyes, polite manners, and a determination that set him apart from others. And although life in Cannes was different from his neighbourhood in Marseille, he quickly adapted to the disciplined rhythm of an academy that demanded focus, patience, and self-control. He trained under coaches who emphasised technique and team play, and while his touch and balance were already exceptional, he still needed to mature physically, so he spent long hours strengthening his body and mind, guided by the advice of mentors who saw potential in his poise and precision. The club encouraged education alongside football, teaching its young players to be respectful, punctual, and responsible, qualities Zidane carried throughout his life. In those years, he often missed his family, but the separation taught him resilience and independence, and when he wasn't training, he watched the senior team's matches, dreaming of joining them one day. That dream came true earlier than expected. In May 1989, at just 17, Zidane made his professional debut for Cannes in a French First Division match against Nantes, stepping onto the pitch with both nerves and confidence as he faced hardened professionals for the first time. His debut marked the beginning of his transformation from a hopeful youth into a genuine footballer, and by the 1990-91 season he had earned a regular place in the team, impressing spectators with his calm control, clever turns, and clever use of space. On February 8, 1991, he scored his first professional goal, also against Nantes, helping Cannes to a 2-1 victory, and the club's president kept a promise he had made to the young midfielder by giving him a car as a reward. That small gesture symbolised a milestone in Zidane's journey, proof that his hard work was paying off. Over the next seasons, he became an important part of the team, guiding attacks from midfield, creating chances, and earning admiration for his composure, even when opponents tried to rough him up. Under coach Luis Fernandez, Cannes enjoyed one of its most successful campaigns, finishing 4th in the 1990-91 league season, which qualified them for the UEFA Cup, a remarkable achievement for a club of their size. Playing in European competition exposed Zidane to new styles and higher levels of pressure, testing his adaptability and vision. Each match deepened his understanding of rhythm, timing, and teamwork, and although Cannes would later struggle and be relegated, the experience had already shaped Zidane into a player ready for bigger challenges. By 1992, his reputation as one of France's brightest young midfielders was growing, and clubs across Europe had begun to notice his blend of grace and grit. His time at Cannes was short but formative. It was there that he learned professionalism, discipline, and responsibility, lessons that would serve him for the rest of his career. The boy who had once played barefoot on the concrete of Marseille had now become a professional athlete with purpose, carrying with him the humility of his roots and the quiet belief that this was only the beginning. When Zinedine Zidane joined FC Girondins de Bordeaux in 1992, he stepped into a new phase of his career, moving from the quiet promise of Cannes to the ambition of a club that competed regularly in France's top flight and in Europe, and it was there that his elegant style truly began to blossom. The transfer gave him the platform to prove that he could lead a team, not just fit into one. And although he arrived as a talented 20-year-old, still learning how to command matches, it did not take long for coaches, teammates and fans to realise that something special was unfolding. Under manager Roland Courbis, and later Gernot Rohr, Zidane was given creative freedom to roam through midfield, to receive the ball, dictate tempo, and ignite attacks with sudden bursts of imagination. And his partnership with forwards Christophe Dugarry and Bixente Lizarazu became the heartbeat of the team. They were nicknamed the Bordeaux Triangle, a trio that embodied fluid movement, teamwork and flair, representing the bright future of French football. Zidane's close control, balance, and ability to spin away from pressure made him stand out even in a league famous for tactical discipline, and his performances began to attract the attention of the national selectors and foreign scouts. In the 1994-95 season, Bordeaux lifted the Intertoto Cup, earning a place in the UEFA Cup, and the following year they went on a thrilling run through Europe, defeating big clubs such as Real Betis, Karlsruhe and AC Milan before reaching the final against Bayern Munich. Though Bordeaux lost the two-legged final, Zidane's performances were electric, showing composure beyond his years and courage to take risks against the continent's finest. That same year, he was named Ligue 1 Player of the Year by France Football magazine, recognition of his growing influence and his leadership on the pitch. His passing range and vision matured with every season, and he began to take more responsibility, captaining the side at times, scoring crucial goals, and mentoring younger teammates who admired his calm authority. Life in Bordeaux also shaped him personally. He met his future wife, Veronique Fernandez, a Spanish-born dancer, and together they started the family life that grounded him amid the intensity of professional sport. While success came, there were also frustrations. Bordeaux struggled financially and sometimes lacked the consistency needed to challenge for the league title. Yet Zidane remained loyal and professional, seeing every match as an opportunity to improve. Reporters often described him as quiet, almost shy off the pitch, but when he played, that silence transformed into poetry, each touch an idea, each pass a sentence in the story he was writing. By the summer of 1996, his form had made him one of the most sought-after midfielders in Europe, and Juventus of Italy came calling, offering him the chance to test himself among the very best in the world. Leaving Bordeaux was emotional. The fans who had watched him grow from promise to brilliance knew they were losing a master craftsman. Yet they also knew that his destiny stretched far beyond France. As he packed his bags for Turin, Zidane carried with him everything he had learned in Bordeaux: the value of trust, teamwork, creativity, and perseverance, and the quiet confidence that the next chapter of his life would bring not just personal glory, but history. When Zinedine Zidane arrived at Juventus in the summer of 1996, he stepped into a club of giants, a place where expectation was heavy and excellence was not requested but required. And he knew that to survive in Italy's Serie A, he would need to adapt quickly to a league famous for its tactical discipline and ruthless defending. Juventus, based in Turin, had just won the Champions League, and under coach Marcello Lippi they were a finely tuned machine filled with world-class players like Alessandro Del Piero, Didier Deschamps, Antonio Conte, and Alessandro Birindelli. And it was in this demanding environment that Zidane would sharpen his game and prove that beauty could thrive even in the land of structure. His early weeks were difficult, as the Italian style of football was faster, more physical, and more defensive than what he had known in France. But his intelligence and work ethic allowed him to adjust, and soon he was orchestrating Juventus's midfield with quiet authority. He wore the number 21 shirt and became the bridge between defence and attack, collecting the ball under pressure, turning gracefully, and threading passes that split opposition lines. In his first season, he helped Juventus win the 1996-97 Serie A title and reached the Champions League final, where they lost to Borussia Dortmund. Yet even in defeat, Zidane's reputation continued to rise as pundits across Europe hailed his control, vision, and ability to influence big matches. The following year, Juventus won another Serie A championship, confirming their dominance in Italy, and Zidane was voted Serie A Foreign Footballer of the Year for both 1997 and 1998, honours that reflected how deeply he had impressed fans and journalists in a league that rarely praised outsiders easily. During this time, he also won the Intercontinental Cup in 1996 and the UEFA Super Cup, expanding his trophy collection while maturing into a complete player who balanced artistry with discipline. Yet the years in Turin were not without challenges. Juventus lost consecutive Champions League finals in 1997 and 1998, falling first to Dortmund and then to Real Madrid. And though Zidane played well, the defeats left a mark that strengthened his hunger for future success. Lippi pushed him to work harder without the ball, to tackle, to defend space. And these lessons would later shape his understanding of balance in football: when to attack, when to pause, and when to protect. Off the pitch, Zidane kept his low profile, preferring quiet family life, with his wife Veronique and their growing children, far from the flash of fame that surrounded other stars. In Turin, he became known not just for his talent, but for his humility, the calm smile he offered teammates and fans, and the respect he showed even in moments of confrontation. It was in this crucible of pressure that he learned how to lead without shouting, how to let the ball speak for him, and how to trust simplicity over chaos. By the end of his 5th season at Juventus, his elegance had captivated the world, and clubs like Real Madrid began circling, convinced that he could bring them the touch of genius they needed to conquer Europe again. In 2001, Juventus agreed to a world record transfer fee of around €77.5 million, and Zidane, grateful for everything Italy had given him, bid farewell to Turin. As he walked away from the black and white stripes that had tested and refined him, he left as one of the greatest midfielders in modern football, carrying with him the discipline of Italy, the creativity of France, and the calm confidence of a man ready to write his name into history once more. As Zinedine Zidane's reputation grew in club football, the call of his country began to echo louder, and it was on the evening of August 17, 1994, in a friendly match against the Czech Republic at Bordeaux's Parc Lescure, that he made his debut for the French national team, stepping onto the pitch as a substitute, and, within minutes, announcing himself to the world by scoring 2 stunning goals to rescue a 2-2 draw for France. It was a remarkable introduction, one that instantly turned heads and gave France hope that a new creative force had arrived to fill the long vacant role of playmaker since the days of Michel Platini. Zidane, quiet and humble as always, spoke little after the match, but his performance said everything. He had grace, imagination, and a certain calm fire that could lift a team when pressure built. Over the next few years, he became a permanent member of Les Bleus, guided by coach Aimé Jacquet, who believed that the key to rebuilding French football lay in young, technically gifted players like Zidane, Didier Deschamps, and Laurent Blanc. France at that time was still haunted by the disappointment of missing the 1994 World Cup after a painful qualifying failure, and the national mood needed renewal, something fresh and unifying, and Zidane's arrival offered exactly that. He wore the number 10 shirt, a number heavy with history, and he began to shape France's style of play around rhythm and intelligence, rather than chaos and luck. At the 1996 European Championship in England, Zidane was central to France's progress, guiding them to the semi-finals, before they were eliminated by the Czech Republic in a penalty shootout. Yet his calmness on the ball and ability to control matches in midfield were widely praised. As he gained more experience, he learned how to lead through composure, not noise, letting the ball speak for him as he connected defenders and forwards with effortless precision. Beyond tactics, Zidane symbolised a new France, a multicultural, modern nation where talent mattered more than background, and his Algerian heritage made him an emblem of unity in a country that often struggled with questions of identity. Fans from all walks of life embraced him, seeing in his calm expression and brilliant footwork a reflection of hope, pride, and possibility. Between 1996 and 1998, he continued to grow stronger in his understanding of the international game, learning how to adapt against different styles, how to handle aggressive marking, and how to perform under global scrutiny. He scored his first competitive goal for France in a World Cup qualifier against Romania, and as the 1998 tournament approached, held on home soil, he was already viewed as the heartbeat of Jacquet's system. Everything was building toward that moment. His childhood in Marseille, his learning in Cannes, his growth in Bordeaux, his sharpening in Turin, all preparing him to stand before his nation and the world when the biggest stage arrived. By the time France's World Cup campaign began, Zidane was not just a footballer. He was the bridge between France's past disappointments and its coming glory, the conductor who would soon lead his country to the most celebrated triumph in its history. The summer of 1998 became the season when Zinedine Zidane's name would forever be woven into the fabric of football history. For that year, France hosted the FIFA World Cup, and the weight of expectation rested heavily on the shoulders of a nation that had never won the trophy, but believed that this time could be different. And at the centre of that hope stood their quiet playmaker, the son of Algerian immigrants who had grown from the concrete of Marseille to the grand stadiums of Europe. France began the tournament strongly, defeating South Africa, Saudi Arabia, and Denmark in the group stage. But the journey was not without early drama. Zidane was sent off in the second match against Saudi Arabia after a brief stamp on Fouad Anwar, an act of frustration that led to a 2-match suspension and reminded everyone that beneath his calm exterior lay emotion and pride. When he returned for the quarter-finals, France had already battled past Paraguay through a golden goal, and now they faced Italy, a country where Zidane had built his career. And in a tense match that ended scoreless after extra time, he stepped up in the penalty shootout and calmly slotted his kick past Gianluca Pagliuca, helping France reach the semi-finals. There they met Croatia, a new nation but a dangerous team, led by Davor Suker. And after conceding early, France fought back with 2 goals from defender Lilian Thuram to win 2-1, sealing their place in the World Cup final for the first time. The opponent would be Brazil, the reigning champions and the world's most feared team. Yet in that moment, all of France seemed united behind Les Bleus. With flags flying from balconies and chants echoing through every street, on July 12, 1998, at the Stade de France in Saint-Denis, under bright floodlights and in front of 75,000 spectators, Zidane delivered the performance of his life, scoring 2 headed goals from corners taken by Emmanuel Petit and Yuri Djorkaeff, rising above the Brazilian defenders with timing and determination that few had expected from a playmaker known for finesse rather than aerial power. Each goal sent shockwaves through the stadium, the crowd exploding in joy as France surged ahead 2-0 before half-time, and in stoppage time Petit added a third to make it 3-0, sealing France's first ever World Cup title. As the final whistle blew, the country erupted into celebration. From the Champs-Élysées to the narrow streets of Marseille, a moment of unity and joy rarely seen in French history. Zidane, his face calm but his eyes full of emotion, lifted the trophy alongside captain Didier Deschamps. And that night he became more than a footballer. He became a symbol of hope, diversity, and excellence, a hero who had led his country to the peak of the world. For his performances throughout the tournament, he was named to the World Cup All-Star team, and later that year he received the 1998 Ballon d'Or and the FIFA World Player of the Year award, confirming him as the best footballer on the planet. Statues were built, murals painted, and children everywhere began pretending to be Zidane in the schoolyard, copying his graceful turns and calm demeanour. The victory transformed France's sense of self, reminding people that dreams could rise from any background. And for Zidane himself, it marked the summit of his career as a player. A night when his talent, his heritage, and his country's spirit came together in perfect harmony under the Parisian sky. 2 years after leading France to their first World Cup, Zinedine Zidane stood again at the centre of a team now burdened with expectation. For the year 2000 brought the European Championship in Belgium and the Netherlands, and France entered the tournament as world champions. Confident, but aware that repeating success is often harder than achieving it the first time. Under coach Roger Lemaire, who had succeeded Aimé Jacquet, the squad remained strong with the same core: Deschamps, Thuram, Blanc, Henry, Vieira, and of course Zidane wearing the number 10 shirt, orchestrating play from midfield with that quiet rhythm that made football feel like art rather than sport. The early matches showed glimpses of brilliance mixed with resilience. France defeated Denmark and the Czech Republic, with Zidane dictating tempo and creating chances, before losing narrowly to the Netherlands in a game that mattered little, as they had already qualified. In the quarter-final against Spain, Zidane stepped forward with authority, curling a magnificent free kick into the net, the ball bending perfectly around the wall and leaving the goalkeeper rooted to the spot. A strike that reminded everyone that his magic could appear at any time. France won 2-1 and moved to the semi-finals against Portugal, a thrilling match played in Brussels that tested every ounce of composure the French possessed. Portugal took the lead through Nuno Gomes, but Thierry Henry equalised, and as the game went into extra time, tension gripped both teams. In the 117th minute, a handball by Abel Xavier gave France a penalty, and Zidane, as calm as if he were walking through a park, placed the ball down and lifted it high into the nets, a golden goal that ended the game instantly and sent France into the final. That single moment captured his character, unshaken, graceful and precise, even when the world seemed to hold its breath. The final against Italy in Rotterdam brought the ultimate test. Italy led 1-0 deep into stoppage time through Marco Del Vecchio, and the French dream seemed to be slipping away. But then Sylvain Wiltord equalised in the 94th minute, forcing extra time. Just like in the semi-final, the golden goal rule applied, and when David Trezeguet smashed in the winner from Robert Pires's cross, France became European champions. Although Zidane did not score in the final, he was the conductor of the orchestra, guiding every rhythm, setting every pace, and his influence earned him the tournament's Best Player award. The victory made France the first team since West Germany in 1974 to hold both the World Cup and European Championship titles simultaneously, a feat that confirmed their dominance and Zidane's role as the greatest playmaker of his generation. Beyond statistics, what stood out was his maturity. He no longer played like the young man of 1998 who chased the ball with passion alone, but like a master who controlled space and time, anticipating opponents, calming teammates, and choosing exactly when to strike. For France, Euro 2000 symbolised continuation, proof that their World Cup triumph was no accident, and for Zidane it marked his peak as a footballer, an artist at the height of his craft, capable of bending matches to his will with little more than a touch, a glance, or a perfectly measured pass. When the tournament ended, he was hailed by journalists and fans alike as the finest player in the world, and though many wondered how long such dominance could last, Zidane himself stayed silent as ever, letting his football speak, while the world applauded the calm genius who made the extraordinary look effortless. By the summer of 2001, Zinedine Zidane had conquered Europe with France and cemented his reputation as the finest midfielder of his generation. Yet another chapter awaited him, one that would take him to the world's most glamorous football club, Real Madrid, and into the spotlight of the Galactico era. Club president Florentino Perez, driven by a vision to build a team of global superstars, broke the transfer world record to sign Zidane from Juventus for roughly €77.5 million, an extraordinary fee that shocked even the most hardened observers and placed immense pressure on the quiet man from Marseille. At his unveiling inside the Santiago Bernabéu Stadium, over 70,000 fans gathered just to watch him juggle a football, a sign of the reverence Madrid held for artistry. And though Zidane seemed shy in front of the cameras, on the pitch he would soon prove that elegance could thrive under the brightest lights. Wearing the number 5 shirt, a number usually reserved for defenders, he joined a squad that already included legends such as Luis Figo, Raúl, Roberto Carlos, and later Ronaldo, together forming a constellation of stars designed to dominate both Spain and Europe. In his first season, Zidane's influence grew steadily. At first, he struggled to find rhythm in the high-tempo Spanish league, but once settled, his control, balance and passing mesmerised the Bernabeu faithful. The defining moment came on May 15, 2002, in the UEFA Champions League final against Bayer Leverkusen at Hampton Park in Glasgow, where, with the score level at 1-1, a looping cross from Roberto Carlos fell from the night sky, and Zidane, watching it drop onto his weaker left foot, produced a strike so pure that it seemed to defy gravity, sending the ball spinning into the top corner. That goal, a perfect volley, instantly became one of the most iconic in football history, sealing Real Madrid's 9th European Cup and securing Zidane's place among the immortals. Over the following seasons, he helped Madrid win the 2002-03 La Liga title, the UEFA Super Cup, and the Intercontinental Cup. And though the club's results fluctuated amid the pressures of balancing celebrity and success, Zidane remained their heartbeat, the man who slowed chaos into order. Fans adored him not for flamboyant tricks, but for his timing, his grace, and the way he made every pass feel like poetry. Even his teammates spoke of how training sessions turned into exhibitions when he touched the ball. Off the pitch, he continued to live quietly with his wife Veronique and their children, avoiding headlines and preferring family life over fame, a contrast to the glamorous image of the Galacticos project. As he entered his 30s, injuries and fatigue began to appear, yet his mind and technique never faded. Every match still carried moments of wonder, a soft flick over a defender, a spinning turn in midfield, a through ball that carved open defences as if drawn with a brush. Real Madrid became both a home and a stage, a place where he could express the purest form of football he had always dreamed of playing. By 2004, after years of brilliance, Zidane decided to retire from international football, seeking rest after more than a decade of unrelenting spotlight, but the world would soon call him back for one final act. His years in Madrid had not only brought trophies and fame, but had elevated him into something more enduring, a living example of grace under pressure, a symbol of how football could be as beautiful as art, and how one man, without shouting or showmanship, could move millions simply by the way he touched the ball. To understand Zinedine Zidane was to understand that football, at its most beautiful, is not merely about goals or victories, but about the way the game is played, the rhythm of touch, the intelligence of space, and the poetry of movement, and no one embodied that truth more perfectly than he did. Zidane was never the fastest player on the pitch, nor the strongest, yet when the ball reached his feet, time itself seemed to slow, and defenders, no matter how quick or fierce, found themselves caught in the quiet orbit of his control. His signature move, the roulette or Marseille turn, was not invented by him, but in his feet it became art, a spinning dance that allowed him to glide past opponents with the grace of a ballet dancer and the precision of a chess master, every motion deliberate, every touch measured. He played the game with both feet, comfortable switching direction, balancing his body in perfect harmony, and he possessed an almost supernatural awareness of his surroundings, often turning away from pressure before the opponent even moved. His passing was a form of storytelling, short, crisp exchanges that built patterns, sudden, long diagonals that opened play, delicate through balls that invited strikers into dreamlike positions. And while others chased the ball, Zidane let the ball chase him, drawing defenders in only to release it at the exact moment it could do the most damage. What made him truly unique was the calm that surrounded him. In the noise of 90,000 voices, he was a still point, breathing rhythm into chaos, deciding when to accelerate and when to pause, when to take risk, and when to protect possession. He could dribble through crowds not by speed but by angles, using balance and shoulders, shifting weight in such small ways that opponents were left frozen by hesitation. Even his mistakes carried elegance. A miscontrolled touch from Zidane looked intentional, part of a wider plan, as if imperfection itself had been choreographed. He scored goals, yes, volleys, headers, curling free kicks, but more often he was the architect, the silent engineer of joy who made others shine. Teammates like Thierry Henry, Raúl, and Ronaldo all spoke of how easy the game became beside him, how he seemed to see passes 2 moves before they happened. Analysts compared him to an orchestra conductor, his eyes scanning constantly, one hand slightly raised to signal rhythm, his movements dictating the flow of the entire team. Yet beyond the tactical or technical lay something deeper. Zidane played with emotion, with humanity, a mixture of serenity and fire that made him relatable as well as revered. When he controlled the ball with his instep, when he cushioned a long pass like a falling leaf, when he spun through defenders under pressure, crowds rose not only in admiration, but in gratitude, for they knew they were witnessing something rare, a player who made football feel timeless. Coaches described him as a dream to manage because he never needed shouting at. He understood the game's language instinctively, and even in training he carried himself with humility, setting standards without words. As years passed and younger players tried to imitate his turns, his flicks, his soft touches, they discovered what his opponents already knew: that Zidane's genius could not truly be copied because it came from the balance between mind and emotion, control and chaos, discipline and imagination. He reminded the world that football is not only competition, but art, not only power but grace, and that the greatest beauty often lies in simplicity. In every match he played, whether under the floodlights of Madrid, the roar of the World Cup, or the quiet of a training ground, Zidane turned the ordinary into the extraordinary, leaving behind not just highlights on film, but a feeling in the hearts of all who watched him. The feeling that, for a few fleeting moments, the game was perfect. Even the most gifted players face moments when brilliance alone is not enough. And for Zinedine Zidane, the story of his career was not only one of grace and glory, but also of struggle, injury, and emotion. Moments when his calm surface cracked to reveal the fierce competitor beneath. From the beginning, Zidane's intensity was both his gift and his burden. He demanded perfection from himself, and when things went wrong, his frustration sometimes escaped in flashes that reminded the world that even genius can burn. During his years at Juventus and Real Madrid, he received several red cards, often for minor acts of retaliation, small sparks of temper provoked by rough tackles or harsh words, and each one became a lesson in control. The stamp on Fuad Anwar in the 1998 World Cup group stage, and the slap on Jochen Kientz during a 2000 Champions League match with Hamburg were reminders that his quiet demeanour hid a passionate heart, one that refused to accept disrespect or injustice. Yet Zidane always reflected deeply after such moments, speaking later about how he had to learn to master emotion, to stay true to his game rather than react to provocation. Injuries too tested his resilience: muscular strains, ankle knocks. And a fatigue followed him through the demanding schedules of club and country, especially as he entered his 30s. At Real Madrid, the weight of expectation was enormous, and as the Galactico project grew, so did the pressure, with constant media scrutiny and changing managers unsettling the team's rhythm. Zidane carried much of that burden himself, often playing through pain or exhaustion, determined to set an example for younger teammates. There were seasons when trophies slipped away, league campaigns lost in the final weeks, European dreams undone by narrow margins, and critics began to question whether the club's collection of stars had become too glamorous and not united enough. Zidane, however, never pointed fingers. His response was always through effort, through humility, through the way he touched the ball and reminded fans why they had fallen in love with the game in the first place. He never sought controversy, preferring silence over complaints. And that quiet strength made him a leader in his own right. In 2004, after France's disappointing exit from Euro 2004, he announced his retirement from international football, believing his time had passed, and France without their conductor soon struggled to find its rhythm. Away from the pitch, Zidane continued to live simply, keeping his family as his anchor, staying grounded despite fame that could have consumed anyone else. But fate was not finished with him. While some assumed his career was winding down, others sensed that his story still had one more act, one more chapter that would test his discipline and emotion to their limits. Every setback Zidane endured, every injury, every red card, every defeat, added layers to the calmness that defined him later, teaching him that strength is not about never falling, but about standing up with dignity each time you do. By 2005, he was approaching the twilight of his playing years, his body slower but his mind sharper, and when France called him back for one final campaign to guide a new generation, he accepted, ready to face the world once again. Not as the flawless genius the headlines once described, but as a man who had fought his own flaws and learned to turn them into wisdom. By 2006, Zinedine Zidane was 34 years old, his legs no longer as quick but his mind sharper than ever. And after coming out of international retirement in 2005, at the request of coach Raymond Domenech, he returned to lead a French team in transition, filled with young players who still looked to him as their compass. The decision was not made for glory but for pride. He felt he owed his country one last campaign, a final act of service to the game that had given him everything. As the World Cup in Germany began, many doubted France's chances, calling them too old, too slow, and past their prime. Yet, as the tournament unfolded, Zidane slowly reminded the world that experience can outshine youth. France drew their first two matches against Switzerland and South Korea, and Zidane was suspended for the third after 2 yellow cards. But upon his return, something changed. The team found rhythm, confidence, and belief. In the round of 16 against Spain, he produced a masterclass, assisting one goal and scoring another with a calm dribble and finish past Iker Casillas, showing flashes of the magician who had once conquered the world. Against Brazil in the quarter-final, France faced the reigning champions, and Zidane delivered perhaps one of the greatest individual performances of his career, orchestrating the entire game with breathtaking control. Every touch perfectly weighted, every pass purposeful. His free kick set up Thierry Henry's decisive volley, and the image of Zidane gliding through the Brazilian midfield became a symbol of elegance conquering power. In the semi-final against Portugal, he scored the only goal, a coolly taken penalty that sent France to their second World Cup final in 8 years. The final, played on July 9th, 2006 in Berlin, was destined to be dramatic. Facing Italy, Zidane walked out as captain, calm as ever, aware it would be his last match before retirement. In the 7th minute, he chipped a penalty off the crossbar and into the net, a panenka that stunned goalkeeper Gianluigi Buffon and the entire stadium, a moment of genius born from pure nerve. But football, like life, rarely grants perfect endings. Italy equalised through Marco Materazzi, and the match became tense, tactical, and emotional. Deep into extra time, after words were exchanged between Zidane and Materazzi, Zidane suddenly turned and headbutted the Italian defender in the chest, an act seen by millions around the world. The referee, after consulting his assistant, showed Zidane the red card, and as he walked past the World Cup trophy on his way to the tunnel, the image became one of football's most haunting moments. Grace meeting fury, glory meeting regret. France lost the final in a penalty shootout, and Zidane, though absent from the podium, was named the tournament's best player, receiving the Golden Ball Award for his brilliance throughout. In later interviews, he spoke honestly about the incident, admitting the words had insulted his family, but never seeking to justify what he had done, taking responsibility with quiet dignity. That night in Berlin marked the end of his playing career, not with a celebration but with a lesson that even the greatest are still human, capable of both the sublime and the flawed. The image of him walking off the pitch, head bowed but unbroken, became as iconic as any goal he had ever scored, a reminder that strength can live inside humility. When he finally hung up his boots, the world of football paused, not just to mourn the departure of a legend, but to reflect on what he had given. Moments of beauty that could never be forgotten, and a final act that made his story all the more human, all the more real. When the final whistle of his playing career sounded in 2006, Zinedine Zidane stepped quietly away from the roar of the stadiums and into a life where the ball no longer dictated his every move. Yet even in retirement, he remained tied to the rhythm of the game that had shaped him. For a time, he disappeared from public life, preferring peace with his wife Veronique and their 4 sons Enzo, Luca, Theo, and Elias, each of whom would follow in their father's football footsteps. He declined countless offers of commentary and publicity, choosing instead to rest, to reflect, and to find meaning beyond fame. But Zidane was never a man to chase comfort for long. The same calm focus that had defined him as a player began to steer him towards something new, understanding football from the other side. In 2009, he accepted a role as an advisor to Florentino Perez, the Real Madrid president, offering quiet guidance on player development and recruitment. And though he stayed away from the cameras, his presence around the club grew stronger. In 2010, he acted as a special advisor to the French national team during the World Cup in South Africa, supporting coach Raymond Domenech and offering insights into leadership and mentality, although France's campaign ended in disappointment. Zidane observed closely, learning about management not from textbooks but from people, from mistakes, from communication, from understanding emotion. In 2011, he became the sporting director of Real Madrid, bridging the gap between players and management, earning the respect of everyone who knew him for his humility and discretion. Yet he felt a deeper pull. He wanted to coach, to be on the training ground, to translate his understanding of the game into lessons for others. So he began again, enrolling in coaching courses and earning his UEFA Pro license, willing to learn from the bottom up rather than expecting privilege from his name. In 2013, he joined Carlo Ancelotti's coaching staff as an assistant at Real Madrid, helping the team that year to win the long-awaited La Décima, their 10th European Cup, with Zidane's influence quietly visible in the team's unity and calmness under pressure. Players spoke of how he brought peace to the dressing room, how he explained complex ideas in simple ways, and how his quiet presence gave confidence to those around him. Later, he took charge of Real Madrid Castilla, the club's reserve team, managing young players and developing a patient human approach to coaching that mirrored the empathy he had shown on the pitch. For Zidane, this was not about fame or legacy. It was about growth, about passing on wisdom without arrogance. He often said that football had given him everything, and now it was his duty to give something back. Off the pitch, he continued his work as a United Nations Goodwill Ambassador, supporting efforts against poverty and racism, and he became a global advocate for social unity through sport. Through all these years, the world watched quietly, knowing that one day Zidane would be called again to lead at the highest level, and that when he did, it would not be with noise or ego, but with the same calm strength that had defined every step of his journey. When Zinedine Zidane was appointed head coach of Real Madrid on January 4, 2016, few imagined the quiet man who had once painted poetry on the pitch would soon craft history from the touchline. Yet within months, his leadership transformed a restless giant into a force of unity and triumph. He replaced Rafael Benitez mid-season, inheriting a team full of world-class players but fractured by tension and inconsistency. And though many questioned his lack of experience, Zidane approached the challenge with the same calm that had once defined his playing days. He spoke softly, listened carefully, and focused on restoring belief, knowing that confidence, not complexity, was often the missing ingredient. Training sessions became relaxed but purposeful. His instructions were clear and precise, and his respect for the players created an atmosphere of mutual trust. The response was immediate. Real Madrid went unbeaten in their final 12 league games, and in May 2016, lifted the UEFA Champions League trophy after defeating Atletico Madrid on penalties. Zidane's first major success as a coach, and Real Madrid's 11th European crown. It was a storybook beginning, yet what followed would surpass even fairy tales. Over the next 2 seasons, Zidane guided Real Madrid to 2 more consecutive Champions League titles in 2017 and 2018, becoming the first manager in history to win the competition 3 times in a row since it adopted its modern format. Under his guidance, the team also won the 2016-17 La Liga title, 2 UEFA Super Cups, 2 FIFA Club World Cups, and the Spanish Supercopa, an extraordinary haul that re-established Madrid as Europe's dominant power. Players like Cristiano Ronaldo, Luka Modric, Toni Kroos, and Sergio Ramos flourished under his management, describing him as a leader who inspired without shouting, who simplified tactics to free creativity, and who made every player feel valued. Zidane's philosophy was rooted in balance, strong defence, quick transitions, and the freedom for his stars to express themselves in the final third. Yet beyond tactics, his greatest gift lay in empathy. He understood the mental strain of elite football, the loneliness behind the glory, and he used that understanding to build harmony in a dressing room filled with egos. His calm presence became a shield during crises. When criticism came, he absorbed it, protecting his players, never blaming, always taking responsibility. Journalists compared his leadership to that of a chess master and a monk combined, strategic yet serene, humble yet decisive. He avoided confrontation with the media, preferring short answers and gestures of quiet respect, and his modesty only deepened the admiration of fans who saw in him a reminder that greatness does not need arrogance. By 2018, after guiding Real Madrid to their 13th Champions League title, Zidane shocked the football world by stepping down, saying simply that the team needed a new voice, a reflection of his self-awareness and integrity. He left the club at the peak of glory, walking away with dignity just as he had as a player, proving again that true strength sometimes lies in knowing when to stop. During those years, he redefined what it meant to be a modern coach, one who leads not through fear or fame but through respect, calmness, and clarity of vision. From the boy who once played barefoot in Marseille to the man who had now conquered football, both as a player and as a manager, Zidane's story had come full circle. Yet even as he stepped back, the world sensed that his connection with Real Madrid and with the game itself was far from finished. When Zinedine Zidane returned to Real Madrid in March 2019, less than a year after his surprise departure, it felt as though destiny had called him home, for the club he had guided to glory had since fallen into uncertainty, struggling for form and identity after his exit. And once again it was Zidane's calm authority that Florentino Perez turned to in a time of turbulence. Madrid had been knocked out of the Champions League early, morale was low, and the media questioned whether even Zidane could restore what had been lost. But as he walked back into the familiar corridors of the Santiago Bernabéu, he brought with him the same sense of quiet conviction that had always defined him. There were no grand promises, no speeches about miracles, just hard work, respect and trust. He rebalanced the squad, encouraged his senior players, and reminded them of the values that had once made them champions: unity, humility, and patience. The transition was not immediate, but by the following season, 2019-20, Zidane's influence had rekindled Madrid's discipline and spirit. Despite a campaign interrupted by the global COVID-19 pandemic, he led the team to the La Liga title, their first in 3 years, built not on spectacular attacking displays, but on organisation, resilience and belief. Karim Benzema found his finest form under Zidane's guidance. Young talents like Federico Valverde grew in confidence, and veterans like Sergio Ramos and Luka Modric once again looked reborn. Zidane's man management, often described as his invisible strength, proved that football was as much about psychology as tactics. He rotated players wisely, protected them from media pressure, and always reminded them that the club's success was greater than any individual. That season's triumph was seen by many as his most impressive, not for the silverware itself, but for how he had rebuilt a fractured side during one of the most difficult periods in football's modern history. Yet, as with every chapter of his life, Zidane's journey was never about endless celebration. The following year, injuries and fatigue took their toll. Real Madrid fought bravely, but finished second in the league and fell short in Europe, and the constant scrutiny from press and board began to weigh heavily on him. In May 2021, Zidane stepped down once more, this time leaving with a mixture of pride and disappointment, writing a heartfelt open letter to fans in which he explained that he felt his trust from the club hierarchy had faded, that he needed honesty and respect more than titles. It was a rare glimpse into the private man behind the public calm, a reminder that even those who seem unshakable have limits of patience and faith. Still, his record spoke louder than any criticism. In just 5 years across 2 spells, he had guided Real Madrid to 11 trophies, including 3 Champions Leagues and 2 league titles, placing him among the most successful coaches in the club's illustrious history. After his departure, he took time away once again, focusing on his family, mentoring his sons, and occasionally appearing at charity events, always avoiding controversy or self-promotion. Offers came from major clubs and even national teams, but Zidane, true to his nature, waited for a project that felt right, not one that merely looked grand. In his reflection, he often said that football had taught him about people more than tactics, about emotions, honesty, and balance, lessons he hoped to pass on to the next generation of players and coaches. His return and second farewell to Madrid showed the world that success, when guided by humility, can be achieved twice in very different ways. First through dominance, and then through rebuilding. And both revealed the same truth about Zidane. that he was not driven by ego or fame, but by love for the game itself. A love so deep that he could walk away from glory without bitterness, carrying only peace and gratitude. The story of Zinedine Zidane does not end with the trophies he lifted, or the goals he scored, for his true legacy lives in the way he made people feel, in the quiet power of his presence, and in the grace with which he carried both victory and defeat. To speak of Zidane is to speak of balance between humility and ambition, art and discipline, silence and authority. And it is that balance which continues to define him long after his boots were hung up and his whistle set down. Across generations, fans remember moments rather than statistics. The volley in Glasgow that defied logic, the two headers in Paris that made a nation dance, the slow walk past the World Cup trophy in Berlin that broke hearts yet somehow deepened his humanity. He was a player who made football look like poetry and a coach who made leadership look effortless. And through both roles he reminded the world that greatness is not measured only in silver and gold, but in the dignity with which one lives their craft. Zidane inspired millions of children who saw in him the proof that elegance could be stronger than force, that intelligence could outshine arrogance, and that one could succeed without ever losing respect for others. His influence extended beyond France and Spain, beyond sport itself, becoming a symbol of unity and diversity. A son of immigrants who rose to represent his nation with pride while never forgetting where he came from. In Marseille, murals still bear his image. In Madrid, his name is sung with reverence. In Algeria, he is embraced as a hero of heritage. As a father, he has quietly watched his sons build their own paths in football, offering guidance without pressure, just as he once guided teammates and players. As a public figure, he has used his platform for good, supporting humanitarian causes, standing against racism, and speaking about the importance of respect and equality, principles that shaped his own journey. Even in retirement, Zidane remains a student of the game, observing its evolution with curiosity rather than nostalgia, attending matches, meeting young coaches, and occasionally hinting at a return when the right moment appears. Football for him has always been about emotion, the connection between people through the ball, and that belief continues to echo in the way others talk about him. Fellow legends call him the most elegant player they ever faced. Journalists describe him as a man who turned pressure into poetry, and fans still watch his highlights not to relive history, but to feel calm, joy, and wonder all over again. His achievements are carved into the record books: World Cup winner, European champion, Ballon d'Or recipient, 3-time Champions League winning coach. But what endures most is how he achieved them. Without shouting, without show, always with a steady gaze and a measured heart. In a world often obsessed with noise, Zidane showed that quietness can be its own form of strength, that respect can coexist with greatness, and that the truest beauty in football lies not in power but in control. His story, from the rough streets of La Castellane to the peaks of world glory, stands as a reminder that talent alone is never enough. It must be guided by humility, discipline, and purpose. And so the legend of Zinedine Zidane continues, not as a tale finished, but as an inspiration still unfolding, a testament to the idea that even when the game ends, its spirit lives on in those who played it with honesty and grace. Thank you for listening to the story of Zinedine Zidane, a journey of talent, discipline, and grace. From the streets of Marseille to the greatest stages in football, his story reminds us that true greatness is built on humility, hard work, and love for what you do. Whether you listened while driving, relaxing, or winding down for the night, I hope this story brought you a sense of calm and inspiration. More stories like this are on the way, but for now, we'll leave it here. This was the story of Zinedine Zidane.